All right, so The Mortal Engines. This one's based on a novel that was written by Philip Reeve, I want to say.
Did
And
you read the novel?
I've never read the novel. No, have you?
Okay. I have not. No, I just wasn't sure.
Okay, yeah. So, a lot of people have mentioned that. I think a lot of people have gotten it incorrect that Peter Jackson, of course, the Lord of the Rings director, the Hobbit director, he did not make this film. He was not. He did not direct the Mortal Engines. Mortal Engines was directed by, I believe, one of his. I don't want to call him one of his students, but like one of his right hand men, Christian Rivers.
Yeah, I think he's one of his like AD
Yeah,
people.
done a lot of
Yeah.
work for him in the past, and then so Peter Jackson had a production credit on this. He was working on something else, I think, while Mortal Engines was being made. I think he was still
The Hobbit?
dealing with Hobbit. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I forget how recent those films were.
No, but I think he was like, well, I think it was not so much that he was busy with the Hobbit movies, but he was just so
Probably
like
burnt
checked out by
out.
those
Yeah, yeah.
that like he decided like I want to make another movie, but I just want to make this documentary, which we'll probably talk about in a week or two, called "They Shall Not Grow Old," which is a little more kind of
Which I see.
mellow.
Yeah, which I see Monday.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see it Monday as well. But yeah, so I don't think it was so much that like the timelines were conflicting, but it was just like I don't want to do another blockbuster. You can handle this.
He needed a recovery
he
for sure.
he wanted to get it made for sure, but he's like I can't like at this point I cannot like have the energy to direct this. So you take it. Yeah.
I can sort of see probably his burnout nature with this too, because this is yet another post-apocalyptic film based on a novel that's mostly, I think, geared toward younger readers. I don't know if it's strictly YA, but Mortal Engines is a concept that does feel very sci-fi gimmicky. It is about, I think, 1,000 years in the future, 1,000 years after we destroyed each other in something called the 60-minute war. We used, I think they're just purple gravity nuclear weapons. It is a little unclear like why they are worse than nuclear weapons, but apparently they were so bad that the entire world got decimated. We rebuilt it, and as you can imagine, we ran out of resources, and so big cities like London, which is our main location here, started to, I think they call it municipal Darwinism. They started to retrofit their cities into roving, marauding predator cities. And so you can see London rolling down a massive landscape, and then you can see the actual landscape itself is covered in tracks. Obviously, cities have been going around, and what they do is they find smaller cities, they ingest them, they put these hooks in them, and we see all of this in the opening sequence, which is, I think, where the film peaks. Honestly, it's a tremendous sequence where the Predator City of London is tracking down this small, tiny blip on the radar, and you can tell they're so desperate for resources, they go all out to get this small little town. And you sort of see that process and why they're doing it, what is the thinking behind these Predator cities, and the dilemma they sort of face, because obviously this is a game that is not going to last forever. Plots ensue, and the mastermind behind the marauding in this case is played by Hugo Weaving. He plays a character named Valentine. He's kind of our swashbuckling villain in this case. And we have a whole cast of characters, a wide range of characters, far more than I was expecting. It really feels like they decided to include a lot of the characters from the books. Normally in adaptations like this, you get the sense that they cut characters out because they just need, it's a film. They need to sort of streamline things. That is not the case in Mortal Engines, and I think quite to the film's detriment, because there is a lot going on in this. And I know, Will Ashton, you're very concerned for me, but this unfortunately is a sleeper for me. This is a film that put me to sleep in the second act, because despite the goodwill from the first, once our main characters get on their main adventure, the two ones are Hester Shaw, played by Hira Hilmar, and Robert Sheehan plays Tom Natsworthy. Robert Sheehan, I remember him from Misfits, a wonderful BBC show that came out a few years ago. He was one of the main characters, and he bowed out, I think, in the second or third season. They're our main characters. They go on a crazy adventure that takes them outside of London, inexplicably, I think. And once we follow the machinations of that plot, I found this one quite difficult to get invested in. It was very hard for me to stay awake. Eventually, the third act shook me out of my complacency, and things started to get somewhat interesting again, only for everything to sort of come to a thudding halt by the end of this film. I did not care for Mortal Engines, Will Ashton, if you cannot tell. I think it is a bit of a slog, but what did you think?
Well, I am rather concerned about your recent narcolepsy, but that's another conversation, I guess, for another time. But no, I think I was more excited for this film than you were, mainly because I am such a big fan of Peter Jackson. I consider him one of my favorite filmmakers. Not so much for Lord of the Rings, but just in general, I think his films are a lot of fun. I think he clearly has a lot of fun making those films, and the only exception I could think of was the Hobbit films, where you could kind of tell that they were dragging on him and he wasn't putting his full heart into it. But
Right.
as it stands, yeah, with Mortal Engines, I agree with you what you were saying at the beginning. Going into this film, there was like that slight chance. I didn't think it was going to happen, but there was that slight chance where it's like, okay, this could be Mad Max Fury Road for like teenagers or for like the PG-13 crowd. And
Absolutely.
I think, and Junkie XL did the score, and they had like that kind of like Tom Waits gargling intro, like in the beginning, the same kind of thing. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is gonna be like that really cool type of thing again. But obviously, the opening's great, and I think it makes a great teaser. But unfortunately, that's like the big set piece. That's like the main draw, and unfortunately, the film, once that ends, I agree with you. It does kind of tunker out. But I think for me though, it wasn't so much the second act that dragged for me, but I just was checked out by the third act. Once a certain character leaves, I can't give away who, but it's like that kind of seems like, I know it wasn't, but it was like, this kind of seems like the climax. And it's like, oh
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
we got to deal with Hugo Weaving, and then that whole scene for me was just like, ugh, let this end. It's just so long and drawn out. That for me was like if I was gonna fall asleep at any point in the film, it would be that point, which is the climax, which is not good for your big action blockbuster. But no, I don't hate it. I think it has a lot of cool stuff going for it, but the story is just crucial here. I don't think it's a bad story, but the way it's written, it's very exposition heavy. Like characters just like, oh, don't you know that exposition,
Right.
exposition. And then, yeah, it just very much like no one talks like the way they would in this world. It just feels like the movie's pandering to us. And I do like the world building, but as it stands, I don't think it's enough to make a solid film after like the 45-minute mark. So yeah, I'm pretty disappointed by it.
The world building is pretty great. The costume design,
Yeah.
the look of these cities, you actually get the sense that this happened, that they sort of lead you to the conclusion that these
Yeah.
cities exist and have like some kind of purpose. And it's something to watch. I mean, I almost would recommend the film just on, to film nuts who really want to sort of wonder behind like how these computer animators were able to put all of this together, because it is pretty
Yeah.
fascinating. The problem,
It
I
kind
think,
of-
yeah, go ahead.
And I was gonna say, it kind of reminded me of Jean Pierre Jeunet films, like City of Lost Children, I think it's called. Or I know he's most famous for Anomaly, but there's something about that that was like,
Amelie,
I would
right?
really, yeah. So I would really love to like just be on the set, like a fly on the wall, like walking around, because I'm sure it looks gorgeous, like to walk around it and stuff. But yeah, unfortunately, I just wish the story was better. But sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, no, but I think it's to add on to that. I think it's the pacing and the editing here. You really got the sense that it was such a bold and audacious production that they didn't get all the good transitions and scenes that they needed, because there's so many weird cuts. And it really does feel like this thing was chopped up because they maybe didn't have quite the material, or they weren't able to make something, they weren't able to use trickery in certain places to make a scene work. So what ends up happening is you cut to scenes that don't make a lot of sense. There are some transitions that are jarring. And I think to what we were talking about with Spider-Verse, it kind of takes you out and you lose that immersion. You're reminded that you're in the theater and that you're watching somebody's handiwork. And that's not where you want to be with a story like this that doesn't have a strong enough script to keep you loving the dialogue and loving the interactions between these characters. There was a moment, because we mentioned Robert Sheehan's character, Tom Natsworthy, who I found a very strangely unlikable character.
Which one?
Tom, he starts as a historian, and he kind of wants to be a pilot.
Oh yeah, okay.
So we learn. Yes, you've already forgotten. We learned quite a bit about him, and in his interactions with Hester Shaw, you're supposed to want her to be invested in him the way that we're supposed to want to invest in him. But he's a very unlikable person. There's a scene that really crystallizes for me where she, we've gotten the message that Hester Shaw, she's a survivalist. She'll do anything to survive, and without any sort of thing happening between her and Tom, where she wants him to be on his own. She doesn't want to have to look out for him. Out of nowhere, she gives him half of her Twinkie. and you're supposed to be like, oh, so there's humanity in this character, and she sees something in him. He doesn't even thank her. He complains about the Twinkie, grumbles about it, and eats it, and that's the end of the scene. And to me, that is an abysmal scene. It makes you hate this character, and it makes you wonder why Hester Shaw is so trusting of this very unpleasant person.
It's the most random product placement I've ever seen in the movie, too.
I think it's a funny joke to the post-apocalyptic, like, Twinkies would survive. I think that kind of fits.
Well, speaking of yellow round or figures, I guess.
This was a Universal film, so yes.
Yeah, there are more minions in this movie than in Illumination's The Grinch, so prepare for that, I guess, accordingly.
Right. It's a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing, fortunately. But they play it for laughs, and it's like one of the few scenes where you do get the sense that, yeah, it's supposed to make you laugh. There are a lot of other scenes in here. I don't think they were ever trying to inject much humor into the proceedings, so it's very strange.
They're attempts, but they're not good.
Yeah, maybe the attempts were so misguided that I didn't even register that they were supposed to make me laugh. Yeah, and then we didn't really mention much of the supporting cast. You know, the only one that really comes to mind, and so you mentioned one of them. It's like a Terminator-esque
Strike. My favorite character in the whole movie.
Very interesting character. I did not like the way that they sort of finished that arc between him and a couple of the other characters. I thought it was a little unearned, honestly. But yeah, he was miles more interesting to me than a lot of these other characters, honestly.
The way he's introduced, I don't know if you noticed this, but a lot of Peter Jackson films, productions at least, you can tell like 85% of special effects are like really good, but it's clear that there's like one or two scenes that are like, Tom, this is game time, crunch time. We got to finish this up. He's like, we're just finishing. We didn't even start. It's like, no, we got to do it now. And that's Shrike's introduction. The CG in that scene is so like some of the worst CG I've ever seen in a movie ever. I don't know if you feel that way, but
it was pretty terrible. Yes.
It was like, oh my, like they approved this. This is in the film. I mean, thankfully it got better a little bit, but I do like the character. I just wish the animation CG for him was even a little bit better.
Yeah, I didn't know if we said this was, of course, Stephen Lang, who I don't think we've seen much of since. We haven't seen much of him since I don't think Don't Breathe. From years ago. Unfortunate, because I think that he obviously can carry better material. Honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was almost Cable.
Yeah, that's right. Also, there is a pilot character who leads this sort of anti-traction league, I think it's called, a resistance group. Ji-Hai plays this character, and she sort of comes into the second act, and it sort of feels like a breath of fresh air, because clearly there's something about her that's going to like really move the plot along. It follows some pretty familiar beats of the characters getting in trouble, and then a group of misfits kind of takes them in and then propels them to what the third act is going to be. What was your take on this character? Do you think it kind of, for me, I don't know if it quite fit this world that we were in. So I had trouble kind of enjoying this part of the film and enjoying her group of people and what they offered.
Yeah, I thought she was a cool character. Like you said, though, I feel like if she was maybe introduced earlier into the film, or if they've given her like more time.
They sort of tease her. Yeah, they drop her name at one point, but that's about it.
Right. In a very clunky exposition, sort of, hey, don't forget foreshadowing. Okay, more exposition. It's a cool character. I thought the performance was good as well, but yeah, I just kind of wish she was either in a better film or they just gave her more to do, because it was a bit of a bummer just to see a kind of rote character, or a fairly rote formula for such a cool character.
Right. We've talked about Mortal Engines a bit longer than I think we expected we would.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm surprised we're still talking about this Mortal Engines movie.
I guess I'm just a little bit fascinated with how this all went down. I give this one a C+. I'm not quite a C, just because I think that, again, world building here really works, and there is some really great effort in production design that I don't want to dismiss. And it like you said, it's not a terrible film. It just you're gonna have a hard time sticking with it all the way through, I think. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think it's like a lot of really cool pieces, but they don't fit together like a puzzle, and it just doesn't quite work. It's a shame. It doesn't come together as well as it should have, and it's just the basics. Like, I think kind of like similar to how you were saying about Vox Lux a couple weeks ago. It's just story is crucial. I mean, if you don't have that foundation, no matter how much good is in this elsewhere. And I think I like the performances a little more than you did, as far as our two leads. I thought they were pretty good. But yeah, just that story is just so by the books, formulaic, and that's not to dismiss the book. I can't speak about it one way or the other, but just the way it's presented in this film. Unfortunately, it was written by Peter Jackson and his wife, Fran Wallish. So I do like their script work elsewhere, but yeah, this story, the screenplay just doesn't live up to what is so good about the film elsewhere, and that's a shame. I'm pretty disappointed, truth be told.
All right, well, that is The Mortal Engines, and what was your final
C+.
grade?
Yeah,
C+,
sorry,
as
C+.
well. All right, it has a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, pretty low, and I think
it's a little yeah.
it's looking like it's going to flop. It's made $22 million at the box office, but it cost reportedly between 100 and 150 million. So huge production, and I think with so many other blockbusters coming out this week and next week and the week after, I really think this film's going to really struggle to find an audience. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, they should have just pushed it back, honestly, to probably the spring, like March or
like they
April.
Did with like Alita Battle Angel.
I honestly think. I mean, I applaud Universal for sticking to their guns and like, we've picked this date and we're gonna go, but yeah, it seemed like they shot themselves in the foot big time here.